The rain pounded against the bus windows like 1,000 warning knocks as Jade Carter sat frozen in the back corner. The whispers slithered through the seats. Fresh meat, easy target, another loser, but they had no idea who they were dealing with. No one knew about the scars hidden under her sleeves, the years spent training in underground fight clubs, or the dark reason she'd been forced to leave her last school. When the queen bee grabbed her wrist and sneered, "Make me!" Jade's fist moved faster than thought. The sickening crack of breaking bones silenced the entire bus. But something will happen next in the story that you would have never imagined. From which country are you enjoying this story? Please make sure to tell us in the comments and subscribe, because this explosive saga is just getting started. The quiet girl who just fought back. She's not who anyone thinks she is. And the real battle hasn't even begun yet.
The rain pounded against the bus windows like 1,000 tiny fists, each drop exploding against the glass with enough force to make the metal frame shudder. Jade Carter sat perfectly still in the back corner, her shoulders pressed against the cold window, her fingers curled tight around the frayed strap of her backpack. The fabric dug into her palm, the rough edges pressing crescent moons into her skin, but she didn't loosen her grip. The pain was good. The pain kept her awake. Around her, the bus hummed with the usual morning chaos, laughter bouncing between friends, headphones leaking tinny music, the occasional yelp when someone got elbowed too hard in the ribs. Jade tuned it all out. She'd learned how to do that a long time ago. Then the whispers started. They slithered through the rows of seats like snakes, winding their way toward her. "Check out the new girl. Think she's gonna cry when we mess with her? Bet she doesn't last a week." Jade exhaled slowly through her nose, her breath fogging the glass beside her. She didn't turn, didn't react, just watched the raindrops race each other down the window, counting the seconds until they reached the bottom. The bus lurched around a corner, throwing a freshman into the aisle with a yelp. Laughter erupted. Jade didn't smile. A shadow fell across her lap. "Hey!" Jade looked up. 3 girls stood over her, their hips cocked, their lips curled in identical smirks. The one in the middle, Mira, Jade would learn her name later, had bleach blonde hair pulled into a painfully tight ponytail, her scalp pink with the strands pulled too hard. She smelled like vanilla body spray and chewing gum. "You're in my seat," Mira said. Jade glanced at the empty bus around them, then back at Mira. "Seats don't have names," she said. Myra's smirk faltered for half a second before coming back twice as sharp. "This one does." Jade held her gaze. The bus hit another pothole. Someone's backpack tumbled down the aisle. "Move," Jade said. Myra's friends giggled. "Or what?" Mira leaned in, her vanilla scent suddenly overwhelming. "You gonna cry? You gonna tell the teacher?" Jade's fingers twitched. Mira saw it. Her eyes dropped to Jade's hands, then back up, her smirk turning vicious. "What's the matter?" "Scared." Jade stood up. She wasn't tall, maybe 5'5" in her worn-out sneakers, but something in the way she moved made Mira take a half step back. The bus went quiet. "I said move," Jade repeated, her voice low. Myra's cheeks flushed. She glanced at her friends, then back at Jade, her jaw tightening. "Make me." Jade's fist connected with Myra's nose before anyone could blink. The crack echoed through the sudden silence. Mira staggered back, blood already gushing between her fingers, her eyes wide with shock. Her friends screamed. Someone dropped their phone. The bus driver slammed on the brakes. Jade adjusted her backpack on her shoulder and stepped over Myra's legs where she'd collapsed in the aisle. "Next time," Jade said, pausing in the doorway. "Listen the first time." Then she walked off the bus and into the rain, the whispers exploding behind her like fireworks. She didn't look back. The school hallway smelled like bleach and sweat, the fluorescent lights humming overhead like angry bees. Jade kept her head down as she walked, her damp sneakers squeaking against the linoleum. She could feel the stairs, could hear the whispers following her like a second shadow. "That's her. The one who punched Mira. No way she's still alive." Jade ignored them all. She'd been through this before. The stairs, the whispers, the waiting to see what would happen next. Her knuckles ached. The classroom door stuck when she pushed it, the wood swollen from humidity. 20 heads turned when she walked in. The teacher, a tired-looking man with a coffee stain on his tie, barely glanced up from his desk. Name: Jade Carter. He checked his clipboard. The transfer. Take any seat. Jade chose the desk in the back corner, same as on the bus. She dropped her backpack to the floor with a thud that made the girl in front of her flinch. The bell rang. No one sat next to her. The lesson started. Something about algebra. Jade stared out the window at the rain still falling in sheets, tuning out the teacher's droning voice. A note landed on her desk. She unfolded it slowly. "You're dead at lunch." Jade crumpled the paper in her fist. The morning passed in a blur of more stares, more whispers, more notes that found their way onto her desk when the teachers weren't looking. Jade ignored them all. She'd been through worse. When the lunch bell finally rang, she waited until the hallway cleared before stepping out of the classroom. The cafeteria was a zoo of noise and movement, the air thick with the smell of greasy pizza and fake cheese. Jade grabbed a tray and got in line, her shoulders tense. She felt them before she saw them. Mira and her friends, huddled at their usual table, their heads bent together. Myra's nose was taped, her eyes swollen and red. When she spotted Jade, her whole body went rigid. Jade took her tray to the emptiest corner she could find and sat with her back to the wall. She'd barely taken 2 bites when the chair across from her scraped back. A boy sat down. He was tall, with dark skin and sharper cheekbones than anyone had a right to have. His hair was buzzed close to his scalp, and when he smiled, one of his front teeth was slightly chipped. "Kai," he said, stealing a fry off Jade's tray. "You're the talk of the school." Jade stabbed another fry with her plastic fork. "Don't care." Kai grinned. "That's why it's funny." He leaned in, his elbows on the table. "You know they're coming for you, right?" Jade didn't answer. Kai's grin faded. "I'm serious. Myra's brother is on the football team. They don't play fair." Jade finally looked up. "Neither do I." Kai studied her for a long moment, his dark eyes searching hers. Then he nodded, like he'd found whatever he was looking for. "Good," he said, standing up. "You're gonna need that." He walked away, leaving Jade alone with her tray and the growing pit in her stomach. She didn't have to wait long. The first tray hit her in the back of the head, sending lukewarm spaghetti sliding down her neck. The cafeteria erupted in laughter. Jade wiped the sauce from her cheek and stood up. Mira stood at the center of her group, her arms crossed, her smile triumphant. "Oops," she said. "My hand slipped." Jade took a step forward, then another. The laughter died. Myra's smile faltered. Jade stopped inches from her, close enough to see the faint freckles under Myra's foundation, the way her pupils dilated with fear. "You want to do this here?" Jade asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "In front of everyone?" Mira swallowed hard. Jade leaned in closer. "Or do you want to wait until there aren't any teachers around to save you?" The cafeteria was so quiet you could hear the clock ticking. Mira opened her mouth, closed it. Jade turned and walked away, leaving her tray where it had fallen, the spaghetti slowly congealing on the floor. She didn't make it to the doors. Someone grabbed her arm. Jade reacted on instinct. She spun, her fist already flying. But this time, Mira was ready. She ducked. And then all hell broke loose. Jade's second punch connected with someone's ribs. She heard the grunt of pain, felt the give under her knuckles, but didn't stop to see who it was. Hands grabbed at her from all sides. Someone yanked her hair. Jade elbowed backwards, felt the satisfying crunch of cartilage. A scream. More hands. She kicked out blindly, her sneaker connecting with something solid. The crowd around her was a blur of faces, some laughing, some screaming, all pressing in too close. A fist grazed her cheekbone. Jade saw stars. She stumbled back, her shoulder hitting the wall. The fire alarm box dug into her spine. Mira stood in front of her, her nose still taped, her fists raised. "Not so tough now, are you?" Jade spat blood onto the floor. Then she lunged. They went down in a tangle of limbs, crashing into a table, sending trays and plasticware flying. Jade got on top, her knees pinning Myra's shoulders, her fist drawn back. A whistle shrieked. "Break it up!" Strong hands hauled Jade off. her feet kicking at empty air. A security guard held her back, his grip like iron. Across from her, another guard had Mira by the collar. The principal, a balding man with a permanent frown, stormed into the cafeteria, his face purple with rage. "My office! Now!" The walk to the office was a blur. Jade's ears rang. Her knuckles were split open, blood dripping down her fingers. Mira walked ahead of her, sobbing dramatically, her friends flanking her like bodyguards. The principal's door slammed shut behind them. "Sit." Jade sat. Mira collapsed into the chair next to her, her sobs turning into hiccups. "She attacked me." The principal rubbed his temples. "I don't care who started it. Fighting is an automatic suspension." Jade said nothing. The principal sighed. "Since you're new, Miss Carter, I'll give you one warning. But if this happens again..." "It won't," Jade said. The principal studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Good. You're dismissed." Myra's head snapped up. "What? That's it." The principal ignored her. "Miss Carter, wait outside." Jade stood and walked out, leaving Mira sputtering behind her. The hallway was empty. Jade leaned against the lockers, her head throbbing. A door creaked open down the hall. Kai stepped out of a classroom, his hands in his pockets. He took one look at Jade and whistled low. "Damn," he said. "You really don't know how to stay out of trouble, do you?" Jade wiped blood from her lip. "Not really my thing." Kai grinned. "Good." He jerked his head toward the exit. "Come on, before Myra's brother shows up." Jade followed him out into the rain. She had a feeling this wasn't over. Not even close. The rain had turned into a steady drizzle by the time Jade and Kai reached the parking lot. Water pooled in the cracks of the asphalt, reflecting the dull gray sky above. Jade's clothes were still damp from the cafeteria fight, clinging uncomfortably to her skin. Her knuckles stung where the skin had split open, but she ignored it. Pain was familiar. Kai led her to an old beat-up sedan parked near the back of the lot. The paint was peeling, and one of the headlights was cracked, but the engine turned over smoothly when he started it. "You got a death wish or something?" Kai asked as he pulled out of the parking lot. Jade watched the school shrink in the side mirror. "Something like that." Kai glanced at her. "You know Myra's brother is Jason Cole, right? Starting linebacker? 6'2", 200 pounds of pure ego." Jade shrugged. "I don't care." Kai shook his head, but there was something like admiration in his expression. "You're either the bravest person I've ever met or the dumbest." "Does it matter?" Kai laughed. "Guess not." They drove in silence for a while, the only sound the rhythmic swish of the windshield wipers. Jade watched the neighborhoods change, the manicured lawns and clean sidewalks of Eastridge's nicer districts giving way to cracked pavement and boarded-up storefronts. Kai turned down a side street, the car bumping over potholes. "You're not from around here, are you?" "No." "Where'd you learn to fight like that?" Jade's fingers twitched in her lap. "Around." Kai didn't push. The car slowed to a stop in front of a nondescript building with a flickering neon sign that read, "Gym." The G was burnt out. Kai killed the engine. "Come on." Inside, the air smelled like sweat and old leather. Heavy bags hung from the ceiling, their surfaces worn smooth from countless punches. A few guys were sparring in the ring at the back, their gloves thudding against each other in a steady rhythm. An older man with salt and pepper hair and a permanent scowl looked up from wiping down the counter. "Kai, who's this?" "Jade," Kai said. "She's got hands." The man, Coach, Jade assumed, looked her up and down. "You the one who broke Mira Cole's nose?" Jade met his gaze. "Yeah." Coach snorted. "About time someone did." He tossed her a roll of tape. "Wrap up. Let's see what you got." Jade caught the tape without thinking. For the first time since she'd stepped off the bus that morning, something in her chest loosened. This she understood. She wrapped her hands methodically, the routine as familiar as breathing. The tape pulled at the raw skin on her knuckles, but she welcomed the sting. It grounded her. When she was done, Coach nodded toward the nearest heavy bag. "Show me." Jade stepped up to the bag, rolling her shoulders. She didn't warm up, didn't hesitate. Her first punch landed with a crack that echoed through the gym. The bag swung violently. Coach's eyebrows shot up. Jade didn't stop. Left, right, left, right. Her fists flew in a blur, each strike precise, brutal. The bag shuddered under the force, the chains groaning in protest. Sweat dripped down her temples, her breath coming in sharp bursts, but she didn't slow down. This was the only time she ever felt in control. When she finally stepped back, her chest heaving, the gym was silent. Coach whistled low. "Where the hell did you learn to hit like that?" Jade wiped her forehead with the back of her wrist. "I told you. Around." Coach exchanged a look with Kai. Then he nodded, like he'd made up his mind about something. "You ever fight for money, kid?" Jade's pulse jumped. Kai grinned. "Told you she'd be perfect." Jade looked between them. "What are you talking about?" Coach leaned on the counter. "There's a place. Underground fights. No rules. Good money if you can last." Jade's hands curled into fists at her sides. "How good? 500 just to step in the ring. More if you win." $500. That was more than she'd ever had at once. Enough to disappear if she needed to. Jade met Coach's eyes. "When's the next fight?" Kai's grin widened. "Friday night." Coach studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Be here at 8. Don't be late." Jade unwrapped her hands, the tape sticky with sweat and blood. She had a feeling her life was about to change. Again. Friday came faster than Jade expected. She spent the week dodging Jason Cole and his friends in the hallways, their whispered threats following her like shadows. Mira had taken to glaring at her from across the cafeteria, her nose still bandaged, but she didn't approach again. Smart girl. After school, Jade went straight to the gym. Coach put her through her paces, drills on the heavy bag, footwork exercises, sparring sessions with guys twice her size. She held her own. More than held her own. By Friday night, she was buzzing with restless energy. Kai picked her up at 7:30, the sedan's interior smelling like fast food and cheap air freshener. "You ready for this?" he asked as they pulled onto the highway. Jade flexed her hands in her lap. "Yeah." The fight was in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. Cars lined the street outside, their headlights cutting through the darkness. Music thumped from inside, the bass vibrating through the pavement. Kai led her through a side door, down a dimly lit hallway, and into a cavernous room packed with people. The air was thick with the smell of sweat and beer and adrenaline. In the center of the room, a makeshift ring was cordoned off with ropes, the mat stained with what Jade suspected was blood. Coach was waiting near the ring, his arms crossed. "You're late." Jade checked her phone. "It's 7:58. Coach grunted. "Exactly." He jerked his chin toward a curtained-off area. "Get changed. You're up in 20. The locker room was just a corner with a few folding chairs and a curtain for privacy. Jade changed into the shorts and tank top Coach had given her, her fingers steady as she wrapped her hands. Kai poked his head in. "They're taking bets. You're the underdog." Jade smirked. "Good." When she stepped out, the crowd parted for her. Whispers followed. "Who's that? No way she's fighting tonight. She's gonna get killed." Jade ignored them. Her opponent was already in the ring, a hulking guy with a shaved head and a sneer. He had at least 6 inches and 50 pounds on her. The referee, a wiry guy with a broken nose, motioned her forward. "Rules are simple. No weapons. No eye gouging. Everything else is fair game. Fight ends when someone quits or can't get up." "Got it." Jade nodded. The guy across from her cracked his knuckles. "This'll be over quick, sweetheart." Jade said nothing. The bell rang. The guy lunged. Jade sidestepped, her fist snapping out in a sharp jab to his ribs. He grunted but didn't slow down, swinging a wild haymaker that she ducked easily. The crowd roared. Jade feinted left, then drove her right fist into his solar plexus. The guy wheezed, doubling over just enough for her to bring her knee up into his face. Blood sprayed. The crowd went wild. The guy staggered back, shaking his head like a bull. His nose was broken, blood pouring down his face. "You bitch." Jade didn't let him finish. She moved in, her fists a blur. Left hook to the liver, right cross to the jaw. A final, brutal uppercut that sent him crashing to the mat. The room exploded. The referee counted. The guy didn't get up. Jade stood in the center of the ring, her chest heaving, her knuckles throbbing. The crowd's cheers washed over her, but all she could hear was the blood rushing in her ears. She'd won. Kai was suddenly at her side, grinning like a madman. "Told you." Coach handed her a wad of cash. "Good job, kid." Jade tucked the money into her waistband without counting it. This was just the beginning. The locker room was quieter now that the crowd had dispersed to watch the next fight. Jade sat on one of the folding chairs, unwrapping the tape from her hands. The skin underneath was raw, the knuckles split open in a few places, but she barely felt the pain. Adrenaline still hummed through her veins, sharpening the edges of the world around her. She flexed her fingers slowly, testing the joints. Nothing broken. That was good. The last thing she needed was another injury to explain away. The school nurse had already given her suspicious looks when she'd shown up with bruised ribs last month. The curtain rustled as Kai ducked inside, holding 2 bottles of water. He tossed one to her, and she caught it without looking up. "You made that look easy," he said, leaning against the wall. Jade twisted the cap off the water and took a long drink. The cold liquid soothed her dry throat. "It wasn't." Kai smirked. "Could have fooled me." She didn't respond. The fight had been harder than she'd let on. Her opponent had been slow, but his punches carried enough weight to rattle her bones if they'd connected. She'd been lucky. Luck wouldn't always be enough. The curtain jerked open again, and Coach stepped in, followed by a man Jade didn't recognize. He was tall, with a tailored suit that looked out of place in the dingy locker room, and a gold watch that glinted under the flickering fluorescent lights. His dark eyes flicked over Jade with an assessing gaze that made her skin prickle. "This her?" the man asked, his voice smooth. Coach nodded. "Jade, this is Marcus Vey. He runs the fights downtown." Marcus extended a hand. "That was quite the show you put on out there." Jade didn't take his hand. "Thanks." Marcus chuckled, unfazed, and lowered his arm. "I like you. You've got fire. And you don't waste words." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card, holding it out between 2 fingers. "I've got a fight next weekend. Better competition. Better payout." Jade eyed the card but didn't take it. "How much?" $2,000 just to step in the ring. $5 if you win." Kai let out a low whistle. Jade kept her expression neutral, but her pulse jumped. $5,000 was more than she'd ever dreamed of having at once. Enough to disappear for good if she needed to. Marcus smiled, like he could see the thoughts racing through her head. "Think about it." He set the card on the bench beside her. "Call me by Wednesday if you're in." He turned and left without another word, the curtain swaying behind him. Coach waited until Marcus was out of earshot before speaking. "He's not wrong. You're good, kid. Better than good. But the fighters downtown." He shook his head. "They don't play by the same rules." Jade picked up the card, running her thumb over the embossed letters. "I don't either." Coach sighed. "Just be careful." Kai clapped her on the shoulder. "Come on. Let's get out of here." The ride back to Kai's car was a blur of noise and shadow. The warehouse had emptied out, the crowd dispersing into the night, their voices fading into the hum of the city. Jade's body ached, the adrenaline finally wearing off, leaving behind the dull throb of bruises and split skin. She slid into the passenger seat, the leather cool against her back. Kai started the engine, the radio flickering to life with some staticky pop song he immediately turned down. "You gonna take the fight?" he asked, pulling onto the highway. Jade stared out the window at the passing streetlights. "Yeah." Kai glanced at her. "You know those guys downtown are on another level, right? Some of them have been fighting since they could walk." "I know. And Marcus. He's not exactly a saint." Jade turned the business card over in her fingers. "I don't need a saint." Kai exhaled sharply but didn't argue. They drove in silence for a while, the city lights bleeding into the quieter streets of Eastridge. "You ever think about just walking away?" Kai asked suddenly. Jade's fingers stilled on the card. "From what?" "All of it. The fights. The bullshit at school. Just leaving. Jade looked at him. His profile was sharp in the dim light from the dashboard, his jaw tight. Why? Kai shrugged, but there was something tense in the motion. Just seems like you're always fighting something. Must get exhausting. Jade turned back to the window. You get used to it. Kai didn't respond. He dropped her off at the rundown apartment complex she called home, the engine idling as she climbed out. Hey, he called before she could shut the door. If you're serious about the fight, I know a guy who can get you some gear. Better wraps. Maybe even some real training. Jade hesitated, then nodded. Thanks. Kai grinned, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. Don't mention it. The car pulled away, taillights fading into the dark. Jade climbed the stairs to her apartment, each step sending a fresh ache through her legs. The door was unlocked. It always was. The lock broken for as long as she'd lived there. Inside, the apartment was dark and still. The faint smell of cigarette smoke lingered in the air, though no one had smoked in here for years. Jade toed off her shoes and padded to the fridge, grabbing a half-empty water bottle and draining it in one go. Her reflection stared back at her from the smudged stainless steel, distorted and warped. A bruise was already forming on her cheekbone, dark purple against her brown skin. She looked away. The business card was still in her hand. $5,000. Jade set the card on the counter and walked to the bathroom, turning the shower on as hot as it would go. The water stung her cuts, turning the droplets pink as they swirled down the drain. She leaned her forehead against the tiles, letting the heat seep into her bones. One fight. That's all it would take. Then maybe she could finally stop running. The next morning, Jade woke to the sound of banging on her front door. She was on her feet before she was fully awake, her body tensed for a fight. The clock on the microwave read 8:17. Way too early for visitors. The banging came again, louder this time. Jade grabbed the baseball bat she kept by the door and yanked it open, ready to swing. Kai stood on the other side, his fist raised to knock again. He blinked at the bat, then at Jade's bare feet and sleep-mussed hair. "Good morning to you too," he said dryly. Jade lowered the bat. "What the hell are you doing here?" Kai held up a paper bag. "Breakfast." And he reached into his jacket pocket, pulling out a set of hand wraps. "These." Jade stared at them. They were high quality, the kind she'd only ever seen pros use. "Where'd you get those?" Kai shrugged. "Told you I knew a guy." He stepped past her into the apartment, wrinkling his nose at the stale air. "Damn, it's depressing in here." Jade shut the door. "I don't remember inviting you in." "You didn't." Kai set the bag on the counter and started unpacking it. 2 coffees, a grease-stained paper bag that smelled like bacon, and a container of fruit. "Eat. Then we're going to the gym." Jade crossed her arms. "We." Kai took a sip of coffee, unfazed. "You think you can take on Marcus's fighters without proper training? Please." He tossed her the wraps. "Eat. Shower. Let's go." Jade wanted to argue, but the smell of food was making her stomach growl. She hadn't eaten since before the fight last night. She grabbed the coffee and took a long drink. It was sweet, just how she liked it. Kai smirked. "See? I pay attention." Jade rolled her eyes but didn't protest when he pushed the food toward her. An hour later, they were back at the gym. The place was empty except for Coach, who was wiping down the counter like always. He looked up when they walked in, his gaze lingering on the fresh bruises on Jade's face. "You called Marcus yet?" Jade shook her head. "Good." Coach tossed her a towel. "Let's see if you're even ready for that kind of fight first." The next few hours were brutal. Coach put her through drills she'd never done before. Footwork patterns, defensive maneuvers, combinations that left her arms burning. Kai watched from the sidelines, offering water and the occasional sarcastic comment. By the time they finished, Jade was drenched in sweat, her muscles screaming. Coach nodded, looking almost impressed. "Not bad. You've got potential." Jade wiped her face with her shirt. "Enough for the fight?" Coach hesitated. "It's your life, kid." That wasn't an answer. Kai handed her a water bottle. "You're gonna need more than one training session if you want to stand a chance." Jade drank deeply, the water cool against her parched throat. Then I'll train every day." Kai and Coach exchanged a look. "Starting tomorrow," Coach said finally. 6 a.m. Don't be late." Jade nodded. She had a feeling the next week was going to be hell. But she'd survived worse. The week passed in a blur of sweat and pain. Jade trained every morning before school, her body protesting with every punch, every drill, every drop of sweat that hit the mat. Kai was there for every session, offering water, advice, and the occasional terrible joke to lighten the mood. By Friday, the bruises from her first fight had faded to a dull yellow, replaced by fresh ones from training. Her knuckles were calloused, her muscles sore but stronger. She still hadn't called Marcus. "You gonna do it today?" Kai asked as they walked to school, the morning air crisp with the promise of fall. Jade adjusted her backpack. "Maybe." Kai sighed. "You can't just show up, you know. They need to know you're coming." "I know." "Then, I'll call him," Jade snapped. Kai held up his hands. All right. The school day passed in a haze. Jade barely paid attention to her classes. Her mind focused on the fight tomorrow. The whispers followed her as usual, but they'd changed. Less mocking, more wary. Even Mira kept her distance, though her glares had intensified. After school, Jade went straight to the gym. Coach put her through her paces one last time, pushing her harder than he had all week. When they finished, Jade was gasping for air, her shirt soaked through. Coach handed her a towel. "You're ready." Jade wiped her face. "You sure?" "No." Coach met her eyes. "But you're as ready as you're gonna get." That night, Jade stood in her apartment, Marcus's business card in her hand. The phone rang 3 times before he picked up. "Marcus Vey. It's Jade." Marcus chuckled. "I was wondering if you'd call." "You in?" Jade took a deep breath. "Yeah, good. Be at the warehouse on 12th and Mercer tomorrow night. 8 sharp." He paused. "Oh, and Jade." "Yeah. Don't be late." The line went dead. Jade set the phone down, her pulse racing. There was no turning back now. The warehouse on 12th and Mercer looked abandoned from the outside. Graffiti covered the crumbling brick walls, and the few windows still intact were blacked out with layers of grime and paint. A single flickering bulb above the rusted metal door cast long shadows across the cracked pavement. Jade adjusted the straps of her duffel bag, her fingers tightening around the worn fabric. The weight of her gear inside, hand wraps, mouthguard, a spare change of clothes, felt heavier than it should have. "You ready for this?" Kai asked, shifting from foot to foot beside her. His breath fogged in the cold night air. Jade didn't answer. The truth was, she didn't know. The past week of training had pushed her harder than anything she'd done before, but the gnawing doubt in her gut refused to quiet. A heavy silence settled between them as they approached the door. Before Jade could knock, it swung open, revealing a mountain of a man with a shaved head and a scar running from his eyebrow to his jaw. "Names," he grunted. "Jade Carter," she said, forcing her voice steady. "Marcus is expecting me." The man's eyes flicked to Kai. "He's with me," Jade added. A beat passed before the man stepped aside, jerking his chin toward the dimly lit hallway behind him. Down the hall. Second door on the left. The inside of the warehouse was a stark contrast to its crumbling exterior. The air hummed with energy, thick with the smell of sweat, leather, and something sharper. Anticipation, maybe, or fear. The walls vibrated with the bass of pounding music and the roar of the crowd gathered in the main room. Jade followed the directions, her boots scuffing against the concrete floor. The second door led to a makeshift locker room, smaller and dirtier than the one at Coach's gym. A few fighters sat on overturned crates, wrapping their hands or stretching. They looked up when Jade entered, their gazes assessing, calculating. One of them, a wiry guy with tattoos snaking up both arms, smirked. Well, Marcus wasn't kidding about fresh meat. Jade ignored him, choosing an empty corner to set up. She could feel their eyes on her as she pulled out her gear, but she refused to give them the satisfaction of a reaction. Kai leaned against the wall beside her, his voice low. "You good?" Jade nodded, focusing on wrapping her hands. The familiar routine steadied her. The tight pull of the fabric, the way it anchored her, kept her fingers from trembling. The door swung open again, and Marcus strolled in, his suit immaculate despite the grime of the warehouse. His gaze landed on Jade immediately. "Ah, Jade. Glad you could make it." He clapped his hands together, the sound sharp in the tense room. "Listen up. Tonight's card is stacked. You're up third." He turned to Jade. "Your opponent is Rico Torres. Nasty left hook. Likes to go for the ribs early." Jade absorbed the information, filing it away. Marcus checked his watch. "Fight starts in 20. Be ready." With that, he was gone, the door swinging shut behind him. The locker room buzzed with renewed energy as the other fighters prepared. Jade finished wrapping her hands and stood, rolling her shoulders to loosen the tight muscles. Kai caught her arm. "Hey!" Jade turned. "Don't let him get inside your head," Kai said, his grip firm. "Rico's tough, but he's sloppy. You're faster. Use that." Jade nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. A knock at the door signaled it was time. "Let's go," one of the handlers called. Jade took a deep breath and followed him out, Kai close behind. The main room was packed, bodies pressed together around the ring. The lights overhead were blinding, casting the crowd in shadow. Jade's pulse pounded in her ears, drowning out the noise. The announcer's voice boomed through the speakers. In the red corner, weighing in at 150 pounds, Rico the Ripper Torres. A muscular man with a shaved head and a sneer climbed into the ring, raising his arms to the cheering crowd. And in the blue corner, making her downtown debut, Jade the Shadow Carter. The cheers were quieter this time, mixed with murmurs of confusion and disbelief. Jade stepped into the ring, the ropes creaking under her weight. The referee motioned them to the center. "Rules are simple," he said. "No biting, no eye gouging. Fight ends when someone can't continue or taps out." "Got it." Jade nodded. Rico grinned, revealing a missing front tooth. "This gonna be quick, sweetheart." The bell rang. Rico lunged. Jade sidestepped, his fist grazing her shoulder. She countered with a sharp jab to his ribs, feeling the satisfying give of muscle under her knuckles. Rico grunted but didn't back off. He swung again, his left hook aiming for her side. Jade twisted away, but not fast enough. The punch connected, sending a sharp pain radiating through her ribs. The crowd roared. Jade gritted her teeth, shaking off the pain. She feinted left, then drove her right fist into Rico's jaw. His head snapped back, but he recovered quickly, slamming his shoulder into her chest. Jade stumbled, the ropes digging into her back. Rico pressed the advantage, raining blows down on her. Jade blocked most, but a few got through, each one sending fresh waves of pain through her body. The crowd's cheers faded into a distant hum. Then, through the haze, she heard Kai's voice. "Jade, now!" Something snapped into place. Jade ducked under Rico's next swing and drove her fist into his solar plexus. He gasped, doubling over. She didn't give him time to recover. Left hook to the liver, right cross to the jaw. A final, brutal uppercut that sent Rico crashing to the mat. The referee counted. Rico didn't get up. The crowd erupted. Jade stood in the center of the ring, her chest heaving, her vision swimming. The referee raised her hand, but the victory felt hollow. Marcus appeared at the edge of the ring, his smile wide. "Well done, Jade. Very well done." He handed her an envelope thick with cash. Jade took it, the weight unfamiliar in her hand. $5,000. She'd won. But as she climbed out of the ring, her body aching, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The locker room was quiet when Jade returned. The other fighters had cleared out, leaving only the lingering scent of sweat and leather. Jade slumped onto a crate, her muscles screaming in protest. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a bone-deep exhaustion. Kai handed her a water bottle. "You okay?" Jade drank deeply, the cool liquid soothing her raw throat. "Yeah." Kai sat beside her, his knee bumping against hers. "That was insane. You should have seen the look on Rico's face when you dropped him." Jade flexed her fingers, wincing at the ache in her knuckles. "He was tougher than I thought." Kai snorted. "And you still kicked his ass." A small smile tugged at Jade's lips, but it didn't last. The envelope of cash sat heavy in her duffel bag, a tangible reminder of what she'd just done, and what she might have to keep doing. The door creaked open, and Marcus stepped in, his hands clasped behind his back. "Jade." "A word." Kai tensed beside her, but Jade nodded, standing on shaky legs. Marcus led her into the hallway, out of earshot. "You impressed a lot of people tonight." Jade crossed her arms. "What do you want?" Marcus chuckled. "Straight to the point. I like that." He leaned against the wall, studying her. "I have another fight. 2 weeks from now. Bigger payout." Jade's stomach twisted. "How much?" 10 grand. She blinked. $10,000? Marcus nodded. "The opponent's a step up from Rico. But after tonight, I think you can handle it." Jade hesitated. The money was tempting. More than enough to get her out of this city for good. But the thought of stepping into that ring again made her skin crawl. "I'll think about it," she said finally. Marcus's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Don't think too long." He pushed off the wall and walked away, his footsteps echoing down the hall. Jade returned to the locker room, her mind racing. Kai took one look at her face and sighed. "Let me guess. Another fight." Jade nodded. Kai ran a hand over his face. "Jade." "I know." She grabbed her bag, slinging it over her shoulder. "Let's just go." The ride back to her apartment was silent. The city lights blurred past the window, streaks of color against the dark sky. Kai pulled up outside her building but didn't turn off the engine. "You don't have to do this, you know." Jade stared at her hands, the knuckles bruised and split. "Yeah, I do." Kai opened his mouth to argue, then seemed to think better of it. "Get some rest. I'll call you tomorrow." Jade climbed out of the car, the weight of the night pressing down on her shoulders. Inside her apartment, she dumped the envelope onto the table, the bills spilling out in a messy pile. $10,000. All it would cost was another piece of herself. Jade sank onto the couch, her body aching, her mind numb. She didn't know how much more she had left to give. The envelope of cash sat untouched on Jade's kitchen table for 3 days. Every time she walked past it, the weight of what she'd done settled heavier on her shoulders. The bruises from the fight had darkened into ugly splotches across her ribs and arms, each one a reminder of Rico's fists and the violence she'd willingly stepped into. Sleep didn't come easy anymore. When she closed her eyes, she saw the ring, the crowd, Rico's sneering face. She heard the crack of her knuckles against his jaw, felt the sickening give of his flesh under her fists. The memories played on a loop, twisting her stomach into knots. On the 4th morning, Jade gave up on sleep entirely. She dragged herself out of bed before dawn, her body protesting every movement. The apartment was freezing, the ancient radiator in the corner doing little to fight off the autumn chill. She pulled on a hoodie and sat at the table, staring at the money. $5,000. More than she'd ever had at once. Enough to disappear if she wanted to. Her fingers twitched toward it, then curled into a fist. A knock at the door startled her. Jade was on her feet instantly, her body tensed for a fight. No one came to her apartment this early. No one came at all, really. The knock came again, louder this time. Jade grabbed the baseball bat leaning against the wall and crept to the door. "Who is it?" "Open up, it's me." Kai's voice. Jade lowered the bat and yanked the door open. Kai stood in the hallway, his hair mussed from sleep, dark circles under his eyes. He held 2 steaming cups of coffee and a paper bag that smelled like fresh pastries. "You weren't answering your phone," he said by way of greeting. Jade stepped aside to let him in. "It's 6 in the morning. And?" Kai set the coffee and bag on the table, his gaze flicking to the envelope of cash. "You've been avoiding me." Jade didn't deny it. She took one of the coffees and sipped, the bitter warmth spreading through her chest. "I've been busy." Kai snorted. "Bullshit." He sank onto the couch, rubbing his face. "Look, I get it. That fight messed you up." Jade's grip tightened on the cup. "I'm fine." "You're not." Kai leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "Jade, you don't have to do this. There are other ways." "I said I'm fine." The words came out sharper than she intended. Kai flinched, then sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Marcus called me," he said quietly. Jade went still. He wants an answer about the next fight. Jade set her coffee down with a thud. Tell him I'm in. Kai's head snapped up. Jade, tell him. They stared at each other for a long moment, the tension thick enough to choke on. Finally, Kai looked away, his jaw tight. Fine. But you're not doing this alone. Jade didn't argue. Kai pulled a pastry from the bag and handed it to her. Eat. Then we're going to the gym. Jade took the pastry but didn't eat it. Why are you doing this? Kai paused, his fingers drumming against his knee. Because someone has to look out for you. The word settled between them, heavy with something Jade couldn't, or didn't want to, name. She took a bite of the pastry to avoid answering. An hour later, they were at the gym. The place was empty this early, the only sound the hum of the fluorescent lights and the occasional drip from a leaky pipe. Coach was already there, wiping down the counter like always. He looked up when they walked in, his gaze lingering on Jade's bruises. Heard about the fight. Jade dropped her bag by the ring. Yeah. Coach tossed her a towel. Marcus is already talking you up. Says you're the real deal. Jade caught the towel, her stomach twisting. Great. Coach studied her for a long moment, then nodded toward the heavy bag. Show me what you got. The next few hours passed in a blur of sweat and pain. Coach pushed her harder than before, drilling her on combinations, footwork, defense. By the time they finished, Jade's arms felt like lead, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Coach handed her a water bottle. Better. But you're still leaving yourself open. Jade wiped her face with her shirt. I won, didn't I? Barely. Coach's voice was gruff. Next opponent won't go down so easy. Jade's fingers tightened around the water bottle. Then I'll just have to hit harder. Coach sighed, shaking his head. It's not just about hitting hard, kid. It's about being smart. He tapped his temple. Fighting's as much up here as it is here. He pointed to her fists. Jade didn't respond. Kai, who'd been watching from the sidelines, stepped forward. We should go. You've got school. Jade had almost forgotten. The thought of sitting through classes made her want to scream, but she nodded anyway, grabbing her bag. Coach stopped her at the door. Jade. She turned. Think about what you're getting into, he said quietly. Once you're in with Marcus, there's no walking away. Jade met his gaze. I know. The school day passed in a haze. Jade moved through the halls like a ghost, the whispers following her as usual. Hey, psycho. Jade turned to see Mira leaning against a locker, her arms crossed. Her nose was still slightly swollen from where Jade had broken it weeks ago. What do you want? Jade asked flatly. Mira smirked. Heard you've been busy. Jade's pulse jumped. What's that supposed to mean? Mira pushed off the locker, stepping closer. My brother saw you at that fight downtown. Said you nearly killed some guy. Jade's fingers twitched at her sides. Jason Cole. Of course he'd been there. Myra's smirk widened. Guess I was wrong about you. You're not just some quiet loser. She leaned in, her voice dropping to a whisper. You're a freak. Jade saw red. Her fist was halfway to Myra's face before she caught herself, forcing her arm back down. Myra's eyes widened, her breath catching. Walk away, Jade gritted out. Mira hesitated, then scoffed, flipping her hair over her shoulder. Whatever. Enjoy your little fights. You'll get what's coming to you. She sauntered off, leaving Jade standing there, her heart pounding. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Jade couldn't focus, her mind replaying Myra's words over and over. You'll get what's coming to you. After school, Jade went straight to the gym. She needed to hit something. Coach wasn't there, but the door was unlocked. It always was. Jade dropped her bag and headed straight for the heavy bag, her wraps forgotten. She punched until her knuckles split, punched until her arms burned, punched until the bag was streaked with blood. When she finally stopped, gasping for air, her hands were a mess. The skin on her knuckles had torn open, blood dripping down her fingers. Jesus! Jade turned to see Kai standing in the doorway, his face pale. What the hell are you doing? He demanded, striding forward. Jade flexed her fingers. wincing at the sting. Training. Kai grabbed her wrists, his grip firm but gentle. This isn't training. This is self-destruction. Jade yanked her hands away. I'm fine. You're not fine. Kai ran a hand through his hair, his voice cracking. Look at yourself, Jade. You're falling apart. Jade's throat tightened. I don't have a choice. There's always a choice. Not for me. The words hung between them, raw and painful. Kai stared at her, his dark eyes searching hers. Finally, he sighed, pulling a first aid kit from under the counter. Sit down. Jade hesitated, then obeyed, sinking onto a bench. Kai knelt in front of her, gently cleaning the blood from her hands. His touch was careful, almost reverent. You don't have to do this alone, he said quietly. Jade didn't respond. She couldn't. The lump in her throat was too big. Kai finished bandaging her hands, his fingers lingering on her wrist for a moment too long. Come on. Let's get out of here. They drove in silence, the city lights flickering past the windows. Kai didn't take her home. Instead, he pulled up outside a small diner, the neon sign buzzing in the dim evening light. You hungry? He asked. Jade realized she was. She hadn't eaten since that morning. Yeah. The diner was nearly empty. Just an elderly couple in one booth and a tired-looking waitress behind the counter. They took a booth by the window, the vinyl seats creaking under their weight. The waitress brought the menus and 2 glasses of water. Jade ordered a burger and fries. Kai got the same. When the food came, Jade ate like she was starving. Maybe she was. Kai watched her, a small smile playing at his lips. Slow down. You're gonna choke. Jade wiped ketchup from her chin with the back of her hand. Shut up. Kai laughed, the sound warm and familiar. For a moment, just a moment, Jade forgot about the fights. About Marcus. About the money on her kitchen table. For a moment, she almost felt normal. Then Kai's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his smile fading. It's Marcus. The illusion shattered. Jade set her burger down, her appetite gone. What does he want? Kai sighed. He wants to know if you're in for the fight. Jade stared out the window at the passing cars, their headlights cutting through the dark. 2 weeks. $10,000. One more piece of herself. She turned back to Kai. Tell him yes. Kai's shoulders slumped, but he didn't argue. He typed out a message and sent it, then set his phone face down on the table. The silence between them was heavy, suffocating. Finally, Kai spoke. I'll be there. Every step of the way. Jade nodded, her throat too tight to speak. She didn't know if that made it better or worse. The next 2 weeks passed in a haze of pain and exhaustion. Jade trained every morning before school, pushing her body to its limits. Coach drilled her relentlessly, correcting her form, forcing her to think 3 moves ahead. You're strong, he said one morning as she panted on the mat, her muscles trembling with fatigue. But strength isn't enough. You have to be smarter than they are. Jade wiped sweat from her eyes. How? Coach tossed her a water bottle. Watch their eyes. Everyone looks where they're going to hit. She filed the advice away, adding it to the growing list in her mind. At school, the whispers had grown louder. More people knew about the fights now, thanks to Mira and her brother. Some kids looked at Jade with fear, others with something like awe. She ignored them all. The only person who still talked to her like a normal person was Kai. He met her at the gym every morning, brought her coffee, helped her tape her hands. Sometimes, when the training was especially brutal, he'd drag her out for food afterward, refusing to take no for an answer. Jade didn't know what to make of it. She'd spent so long on her own that having someone in her corner felt foreign, almost uncomfortable. But she didn't tell him to stop. The night before the fight, Jade couldn't sleep. She lay on her couch, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing. Her phone buzzed. You awake? Jade typed back. Yeah. Open your door. Jade frowned but obeyed. Kai stood in the hallway, his hands shoved in his pockets, his shoulders hunched against the cold. What are you doing here? She asked. Kai held up a DVD. Thought you could use a distraction. Jade stepped aside to let him in. What is it? Some old action movie. Terrible dialogue, great fight scenes. He flopped onto the couch, already making himself at home. Jade sat beside him, leaving a careful space between them. You didn't have to do this. Kai shrugged, popping the DVD into her ancient player. I know. They watched the movie in comfortable silence, the dim light from the screen flickering across their faces. At some point, Jade realized she'd relaxed, her shoulders loosening for the first time in days. When the credits rolled, Kai stretched, yawning. You should get some sleep. Jade nodded, but the thought of the fight tomorrow settled like a stone in her gut. Kai seemed to sense her tension. He hesitated, then reached out, squeezing her shoulder. You're ready. Jade wanted to believe him. After Kai left, she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, counting the cracks in the plaster until the sun rose. The day of the fight dragged. Every minute felt like an hour, every hour like a lifetime. Jade went through the motions at school, her mind miles away. After the final bell, Kai met her at her locker. Ready? Jade nodded, her throat too tight to speak. They drove to the warehouse in silence. The crowd was bigger this time, the air thick with the smell of sweat and anticipation. Marcus met them at the door, his smile sharp. Jade, glad you could make it. Jade ignored him, heading straight for the locker room. Her opponent was already there, a woman with dark hair shaved close to her scalp and a scar running across her lip. She looked up when Jade entered, her gaze assessing. So you're the new blood, she said, her voice low and rough. Jade said nothing, choosing a corner to set up. The woman smirked. Quiet type. I like that. She stood, stretching. Name's Reyes. Try to make it interesting, yeah. Then she was gone, leaving Jade alone with Kai. Kai helped her wrap her hands, his fingers steady. You got this. Jade flexed her fingers, testing the wraps. Yeah. The announcer's voice boomed through the speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the main event. It was time. Jade stood, rolling her shoulders. Kai caught her arm. Hey! She turned. Kai hesitated, then pulled her into a quick, tight hug. Don't die, he muttered. Jade stiffened, then relaxed slightly, patting his back awkwardly. No promises. Then she walked out, toward the ring, toward the roar of the crowd, toward whatever came next. The walk to the ring felt longer than it should have. The crowd pressed in on all sides, their voices blending into a single roar that pulsed in time with Jade's heartbeat. The lights overhead were blinding, casting the ring into sharp relief against the shadowed faces of the spectators. Jade climbed through the ropes, the mat rough beneath her bare feet. Across from her, Reyes bounced lightly on her toes, rolling her neck with a series of audible cracks. Her dark eyes locked onto Jade, unreadable. The referee motioned them to the center. Rules are the same as last time. No biting, no eye gouging. Fight ends when someone can't continue or taps out. He looked between them. Understood. Jade nodded. Reyes smirked. Let's make it fun. The bell rang. Reyes moved first, a blur of muscle and motion. Jade barely had time to raise her guard before a fist connected with her ribs, sending a sharp burst of pain through her side. She staggered back, the ropes digging into her spine. The crowd erupted. Jade shook off the pain, refocusing. Reyes was fast, faster than Rico had been, but there was an opening in her stance, a slight imbalance when she shifted her weight. Jade feinted left, then drove a right hook into Reyes's exposed side. Reyes grunted but didn't back off, retaliating with a brutal elbow to Jade's temple. Stars exploded across Jade's vision. She stumbled, her knees buckling for a split second before she caught herself. Reyes pressed the advantage, raining down blows with terrifying precision. Jade blocked what she could, but too many got through. A knee to the stomach, a fist to the jaw, a sharp kick to her already bruised ribs. The world narrowed to the ache in her bones and the roar of the crowd. Then, through the haze, she heard Kai's voice. Jade! Now! Something in her snapped. She ducked under Reyes's next swing and drove her shoulder into the woman's stomach, sending them both crashing to the mat. The impact knocked the air from Reyes's lungs, her breath coming in a sharp gasp. Jade didn't hesitate. She pinned Reyes down, her fists flying. Left, right, left, right. Reyes' arms came up to block, but Jade was relentless. Her punches fueled by weeks of frustration, of pain, of the gnawing fear that this was all she'd ever be. A weapon, a fighter, a thing built for violence. Reyes' guard faltered. Jade's next punch connected with her jaw, snapping her head to the side. The referee was suddenly there, pulling Jade back. That's enough. Jade blinked, the world coming back into focus. Reyes lay motionless on the mat, her chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. The crowd was silent for a heartbeat, then erupted into chaos. The referee raised Jade's hand. Winner! The words barely registered. Jade's hands throbbed, her vision swam, and the taste of copper filled her mouth. Marcus appeared at the edge of the ring, his smile wide. Incredible, he said, handing her an envelope thicker than the last. 10 grand as promised. Jade took it numbly. Kai was suddenly beside her, his arm around her shoulders, steadying her as she climbed out of the ring. Let's get you cleaned up. The locker room was empty when they arrived. Jade sank onto a bench, her body trembling with exhaustion. Kai wet a towel and pressed it to her split lip. You okay? Jade winced but didn't pull away. Yeah. Kai's fingers were gentle as he cleaned the blood from her face. You scared me for a second there. Jade didn't respond. She wasn't sure what to say. The door creaked open, and Marcus stepped in, his hands clasped behind his back. Jade. That was quite the performance. Jade tensed. What do you want? Marcus chuckled. Straight to the point. I like that. He leaned against the wall, studying her. I have a proposition for you. Jade's fingers curled into fists. I'm listening. Marcus's smile widened. How would you like to make 20 grand in one night? The number hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Kai stiffened beside her. Marcus. Marcus held up a hand. Let her answer. Jade met his gaze. Who's the opponent? Marcus's smile turned sharp. Me. The locker room went silent. Kai's grip on Jade's shoulder tightened. You can't be serious. Marcus ignored him, his eyes locked on Jade. What do you say? Jade's pulse pounded in her ears. $20,000. Enough to disappear forever. But at what cost? She took a deep breath. When? Marcus's grin was all teeth. 2 weeks. Jade nodded. I'm in. Kai made a strangled noise beside her, but Jade didn't look at him. Marcus clapped his hands together. Excellent. I'll see you then. He left, the door swinging shut behind him. The silence that followed was suffocating. Kai turned to her, his face pale. Jade, you can't. I already said yes. Kai's hands clenched at his sides. He'll kill you. Jade stood, wincing as her bruises protested. I can handle it. Kai grabbed her arm, his grip tight. No, you can't. Marcus doesn't fight fair. I said I can handle it. Jade yanked her arm free, her voice cracking. This is my choice, Kai. Not yours. Kai stared at her, his dark eyes wide. Then, slowly, he stepped back. Fine. The word was heavy with finality. Jade turned away, grabbing her bag. I need to go. Kai didn't try to stop her. The walk home was a blur. The envelope of cash burned a hole in her pocket, the weight of it a constant reminder of what she'd done, and what she'd agreed to do. Her apartment was dark when she arrived. She dropped the envelope on the table, the bills spilling out in a messy pile. $20,000. All it would cost was everything. Jade sank onto the couch, her body aching, her mind numb. She didn't know if she could do this, but she didn't know how to stop. The next morning, Jade woke to the sound of her phone buzzing. She fumbled for it, her fingers clumsy with sleep. You up? Jade hesitated, then typed back. Yeah. Asterisk, meet me at the diner. 30 minutes. Asterisk. Jade didn't respond. Last night's fight, and the argument that followed, hung between them like a wall. Her phone buzzed again. Please. Jade sighed. Fine. The diner was quiet when she arrived. The morning crowd thin. Kai sat in their usual booth, 2 coffees and a plate of pancakes waiting. Jade slid into the seat across from him. What do you want? Kai pushed one of the coffees toward her. To talk. Jade took the coffee but didn't drink it. About what? Kai leaned forward, his voice low. You can't fight Marcus. Jade's grip tightened on the cup. I already said yes. And you can say no. Kai ran a hand through his hair, his frustration evident. Jade, this isn't just another fight. Marcus doesn't lose. Ever. Jade shrugged. There's a first time for everything. Kai's jaw clenched. Why are you doing this? The question hung between them, heavy with everything they hadn't said. Jade looked away. I need the money. For what? Jade didn't answer. Kai sighed. Look, if it's about rent or... It's not about rent. Jade's voice was sharper than she intended. Kai studied her for a long moment. Then what is it about? Jade's throat tightened. She couldn't tell him the truth, that she needed enough to disappear, to start over somewhere no one would find her, that she was tired of fighting, of running, of being nothing but a weapon. So she lied. It doesn't matter. Kai's shoulders slumped. Fine. He pushed the plate of pancakes toward her. Eat. Then we're going to the gym. Jade blinked. What? Kai met her gaze, his expression determined. If you're going to do this, you're going to be ready. Jade didn't know what to say, so she ate. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of pain and exhaustion. Jade trained harder than ever, pushing her body to its absolute limits. Coach drilled her relentlessly, correcting her form, forcing her to think ahead. You're strong, he said one morning as she panted on the mat, her muscles trembling with fatigue. But Marcus is stronger. You have to be smarter. Jade wiped sweat from her eyes. How? Coach tossed her a water bottle. Watch his tells. Everyone has them. Jade filed the advice away, adding it to the growing list in her mind. At school, the whispers had reached a fever pitch. More people knew about the fights now, thanks to Jason Cole and his friends. Some kids looked at Jade with fear, others with something like awe. She ignored them all. The only person who still talked to her like a normal person was Kai. He met her at the gym every morning, brought her coffee, helped her tape her hands. Sometimes, when the training was especially brutal, he'd drag her out for food afterward, refusing to take no for an answer. Jade didn't know what to make of it. She'd spent so long on her own that having someone in her corner felt foreign, almost uncomfortable. But she didn't tell him to stop. The night before the fight, Jade couldn't sleep. She lay on her couch, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing. Her phone buzzed. You awake? Jade typed back. Yeah. Open your door. Jade frowned but obeyed. Kai stood in the hallway, his hands shoved in his pockets, his shoulders hunched against the cold. What are you doing here? She asked. Kai held up a DVD. Thought you could use a distraction. Jade stepped aside to let him in. What is it? Some old action movie. Terrible dialogue, great fight scenes. He flopped onto the couch, already making himself at home. Jade sat beside him, leaving a careful space between them. You didn't have to do this. Kai shrugged, popping the DVD into her ancient player. I know. They watched the movie in comfortable silence, the dim light from the screen flickering across their faces. At some point, Jade realized she'd relaxed, her shoulders loosening for the first time in days. When the credits rolled, Kai stretched, yawning. You should get some sleep. Jade nodded, but the thought of the fight tomorrow settled like a stone in her gut. Kai seemed to sense her tension. He hesitated, then reached out, squeezing her shoulder. You're ready. Jade wanted to believe him. After Kai left, she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, counting the cracks in the plaster until the sun rose. The day of the fight dragged. Every minute felt like an hour, every hour like a lifetime. Jade went through the motions at school, her mind miles away. After the final bell, Kai met her at her locker. Ready? Jade nodded, her throat too tight to speak. They drove to the warehouse in silence. The crowd was bigger than ever, the air thick with the smell of sweat and anticipation. Marcus met them at the door, his smile sharp. Jade. Glad you could make it. Jade ignored him, heading straight for the locker room. Marcus was already there, stretching in the corner. He looked up when Jade entered, his gaze assessing. "Ready for our dance?" he asked, his voice smooth. Jade said nothing, choosing a corner to set up. Marcus chuckled. "Still the quiet type. I like that." Kai helped Jade wrap her hands, his fingers steady. "You got this." Jade flexed her fingers, testing the wraps. "Yeah." The announcer's voice boomed through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the main event." It was time. Jade stood, rolling her shoulders. Kai caught her arm. "Hey!" She turned. Kai hesitated, then pulled her into a quick, tight hug. "Don't die," he muttered. Jade stiffened, then relaxed slightly, patting his back awkwardly. "No promises." Then she walked out, toward the ring, toward the roar of the crowd, toward Marcus, toward whatever came next. The warehouse was packed tighter than Jade had ever seen it. Bodies pressed shoulder to shoulder around the ring, their collective breath steaming in the cold air. The lights overhead were blinding, casting long shadows that flickered across the blood-stained canvas. Jade climbed through the ropes, her muscles coiled tight. Across from her, Marcus rolled his shoulders, his suit jacket discarded to reveal a torso crisscrossed with scars. His smile was all teeth. The referee motioned them to the center. "No biting, no eye gouging. Fight ends when someone can't continue." He looked between them. "Understood." Marcus nodded. Jade said nothing. The bell rang. Marcus moved first, a blur of motion. Jade barely had time to raise her guard before his fist connected with her ribs, sending a sharp burst of pain through her side. She staggered back, the ropes digging into her spine. The crowd erupted. Jade shook off the pain, refocusing. Marcus was fast. Faster than Reyes. Faster than anyone she'd faced. But Coach's words echoed in her mind. "Everyone has tells." She watched Marcus's eyes. He feinted left, then swung right. Jade saw it coming. She ducked under the blow and drove her fist into Marcus's stomach. The impact sent a shockwave up her arm, but Marcus barely flinched. He grabbed her wrist and twisted, forcing her to her knees. "Good try," he murmured, just for her. Then his knee connected with her jaw. White-hot pain exploded behind Jade's eyes. She hit the mat hard, her vision swimming. The crowd's roar faded to a distant hum. Somewhere beyond the ringing in her ears, she heard Kai's voice. "Jade, get up." She forced herself onto her hands and knees, spitting blood onto the canvas. Marcus stood over her, his expression unreadable. "You don't have to do this," he said, so quiet only she could hear. Jade looked up at him, her vision blurred. "Yes, I do." She lunged. Her fist connected with Marcus's jaw, the impact reverberating up her arm. Marcus's head snapped back, but he recovered instantly, countering with a brutal elbow to her temple. Jade saw stars. She stumbled back, her legs threatening to give out. Marcus pressed the advantage, his fists a blur. Left, right, left, right. Jade blocked what she could, but too many got through. A punch to the ribs, a knee to the stomach, a sharp kick to her already bruised side. The world narrowed to the ache in her bones and the roar of the crowd. Then through the haze she saw it, the tell. Marcus's left eye twitched, just slightly, before he threw a right hook. Jade dodged. Marcus's fist sailed past her face, his balance thrown. Jade didn't hesitate. She drove her fist into his solar plexus. Marcus gasped, doubling over. Jade's next punch connected with his jaw, then his nose, then his temple. Marcus staggered back, blood streaming from his nose. The crowd was on their feet, their screams deafening. Jade didn't let up. She pressed forward, her fists flying. Left, right, left, right. Marcus's guard faltered. Jade's next punch sent him crashing to the mat. The referee was suddenly there, counting. 1, 2, 3. Marcus didn't move. 4, 5. The crowd held its breath. 6, 7. Marcus's fingers twitched. 8, 9. Jade braced herself. 10. The bell rang. The crowd erupted. Jade stood in the center of the ring, her chest heaving, her vision swimming. The referee raised her hand, but the victory felt hollow. Marcus sat up slowly, wiping blood from his mouth. His smile was gone, replaced by something Jade couldn't name. "Congratulations," he said, his voice rough. Then he stood and walked away, the crowd parting for him like the Red Sea. Kai was suddenly in the ring, his arm around her shoulders. "You did it," he breathed, his voice thick with disbelief. Jade didn't respond. Her hands throbbed, her vision swam, and the taste of copper filled her mouth. Marcus's second appeared, handing her an envelope thicker than any before. 20 grand as promised. Jade took it numbly. The walk back to the locker room was a blur. Kai helped her sit, then set to work cleaning the blood from her face. "You're a mess," he muttered, his hands gentle. Jade winced as the antiseptic stung her split lip. "Worth it?" Kai paused, his dark eyes searching hers. "Was it?" Jade didn't answer. The door creaked open, and Marcus stepped in. His nose was broken, his lip split, but his expression was unreadable. Kai tensed beside her. "What do you want?" Marcus ignored him, his gaze locked on Jade. "A word. Alone." Kai's grip on Jade's shoulder tightened. "No way." Jade patted his hand. "It's fine." Kai hesitated, then stood. "I'll be right outside." The door clicked shut behind him, leaving Jade alone with Marcus. He studied her for a long moment, then sighed. "You're full of surprises, Jade Carter." Jade flexed her fingers, testing the joints. "What do you want?" Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out another envelope, thicker than the first. "Another fight." Jade stared at it. "How much?" 50 grand. The number hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Jade's pulse jumped. $50,000. Enough to disappear forever. But at what cost? She met Marcus's gaze. "Who's the opponent?" Marcus's smile was sharp. "Someone you know." Jade's stomach twisted. "Who?" The door burst open before Marcus could answer. Kai stood there, his face pale. "Jade, we have to go. Now." Jade stood, wincing as her bruises protested. "What's wrong?" Kai's hands were shaking. "Jason Cole is here. And he's not alone." Jade's blood ran cold. Marcus chuckled. "Seems your reputation precedes you." Jade grabbed her bag and followed Kai out the door, Marcus's laughter ringing in her ears. The warehouse was in chaos. People scrambled in every direction. Their voices panicked. "What's happening?" Jade asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Kai's grip on her arm was tight. "Jason brought his crew. They're looking for you." Jade's pulse pounded in her ears. "Why?" Kai hesitated. "They think you're working for Marcus." Jade's stomach dropped. "What?" Kai pulled her toward a side exit. "We have to go. Now." They burst out into the cold night air, the sound of shouting close behind. Jade didn't look back. Part 16. The streets were a blur as Jade and Kai ran, their breath fogging in the cold air. The sound of footsteps echoed behind them, too close for comfort. "Where are we going?" Jade gasped, her side aching. Kai glanced over his shoulder. "Somewhere safe." They ducked into an alley, pressing themselves against the damp brick wall. The footsteps passed by, fading into the distance. Jade slumped against the wall, her chest heaving. "What the hell was that?" Kai ran a hand through his hair. "Jason's been telling everyone you're Marcus's new enforcer. That you're working for him." Jade's stomach twisted. "That's not true." "I know that." Kai's voice was sharp. "But they don't." Jade closed her eyes, her head pounding. "This is bad." Kai snorted. "No shit." They stayed in the alley for what felt like hours, waiting for the coast to clear. When the streets finally fell silent, Kai grabbed Jade's hand. "Come on." He led her through a maze of back streets, finally stopping in front of a run-down apartment building. The paint was peeling, and the front door hung slightly off its hinges. Kai dug a key out of his pocket and unlocked the door. Home sweet home. The apartment was small but tidy, the furniture worn but clean. A single lamp cast a warm glow over the living room, illuminating a couch piled with blankets. Jade hesitated in the doorway. "Your place." Kai nodded, kicking off his shoes. Not much, but it's safe. Jade stepped inside, the door clicking shut behind her. Thanks. Kai shrugged, heading for the kitchen. Hungry? Jade realized she was starving. Yeah. Kai rummaged through the fridge, pulling out a carton of takeout. Chinese okay? Jade nodded, sinking onto the couch. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a bone-deep exhaustion. Kai handed her a container of lo mein and a fork. Eat. They ate in silence, the only sound the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional car passing outside. Finally, Kai set his food aside. We need to talk about what happened. Jade poked at her noodles. What's there to talk about? Kai gave her a look. Jade. She sighed, setting her food down. I don't know what you want me to say. The truth would be nice. Kai's voice was quiet but firm. Why are you really doing this? Jade's throat tightened. She could lie, could brush him off like she always did. But something in his eyes made the words stick in her throat. I need the money, she said finally. Kai waited. Jade took a shaky breath. To leave. Kai's expression didn't change. Where would you go? I don't know. Jade's voice cracked. Anywhere. Just away. Kai was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded, as if he'd expected this all along. When? Jade looked down at her hands. Soon. Kai exhaled sharply. And what about me? The question hung between them, heavy with everything they hadn't said. Jade didn't know how to answer. Kai stood abruptly, grabbing their empty containers. You should get some sleep. Jade wanted to say something, anything, but the words wouldn't come. Kai disappeared into the kitchen, the sound of running water filling the silence. Jade lay back on the couch, staring at the ceiling. She didn't know what she was doing anymore. Part 17. Jade woke to the smell of coffee. Sunlight streamed through the thin curtains, casting golden stripes across the carpet. She sat up, wincing as her bruises protested. The events of last night came rushing back. The fight, Marcus's offer, Jason and his crew. Kai stood in the kitchen, his back to her. He was already dressed, his hair damp from a shower. Jade cleared her throat. Hey! Kai turned, his expression unreadable. Morning. He held out a mug. Coffee. Jade took it, the warmth seeping into her fingers. Thanks. Kai leaned against the counter, sipping his own coffee. We need to figure out what to do about Jason. Jade's stomach twisted. What is there to do? Kai gave her a look. He's not just going to let this go, Jade. Jade set her coffee down. I know. Kai sighed, running a hand through his hair. Look, I have a friend who can help. He's got connections. Maybe he can. No. Jade's voice was firm. I'm not dragging anyone else into this. Kai's jaw tightened. You're not in this alone. Jade stood, wincing as her muscles protested. I need to go. Kai grabbed her arm. Where? Home. Kai's grip tightened. Jade. I'll be fine. Jade pulled away, grabbing her bag. Thanks for letting me stay. Kai didn't try to stop her. The walk back to her apartment was tense. Every shadow felt like a threat, every passing car a potential danger. Her apartment was just as she'd left it. The envelope of cash still on the table. The blankets on the couch rumpled from where she'd slept the night before last. Jade locked the door behind her, then sank onto the couch, her head in her hands. She didn't know what to do. Her phone buzzed. You okay? Jade stared at the message, her fingers hovering over the screen. She didn't know how to answer. The phone screen dimmed as Jade stared at it, her fingers frozen over the keyboard. The apartment was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic outside. She set the phone down without replying, the weight of everything pressing down on her shoulders. $20,000 sat on the table in front of her. $50,000 more if she took Marcus's next fight. Enough to disappear. Enough to start over somewhere no one knew her name. But at what cost? Jade stood abruptly, pacing the length of the small apartment. Her body ached from last night's fight, every bruise and split knuckle a reminder of what she'd done, and what she might still have to do. A knock at the door made her freeze. Her hand went to the baseball bat leaning against the wall. "Who is it?" "Kai." Jade hesitated, then lowered the bat and opened the door. Kai stood in the hallway, his hands shoved in his pockets, his shoulders tense. He looked like he hadn't slept. "You didn't answer my text." Jade stepped aside to let him in. "I was busy." Kai raised an eyebrow at the untouched envelope on the table, but didn't comment. He sank onto the couch, running a hand over his face. "We need to talk." Jade crossed her arms. "About what?" "About the fact that Jason Cole is telling everyone you're working for Marcus now." Kai's voice was tight. "About the fact that half the school is either terrified of you or wants to fight you. About the fact that you're planning to take Marcus's money and run." Jade's jaw clenched. "It's none of your business." Kai stood abruptly, his hands balling into fists at his sides. "The hell it isn't." The outburst surprised her. Kai was always the calm one, the one who joked his way through everything. Seeing him like this, angry, frustrated, his usual smirk gone, made something twist in Jade's chest. Kai took a deep breath, visibly forcing himself to relax. "Look, I get it. You don't trust people. You don't want to rely on anyone. But you can't just..." "Just what?" Jade snapped. "Leave." "Why not?" "There's nothing keeping me here." The words hung between them, sharp and final. Kai's expression shuttered. "Right." He turned toward the door. "I'll let you get on with it, then." Jade's stomach lurched. "Kai!" He didn't stop. The door clicked shut behind him, leaving Jade alone in the sudden silence. She sank onto the couch, her hands shaking. Her phone buzzed again. Not Kai this time. "Marcus. Asterisk, meet me at the gym. We need to talk." Asterisk. Jade stared at the message, her pulse quickening. She knew what he wanted. The question was, did she want it too? The gym was empty when Jade arrived, the heavy bags still swaying slightly from the last person who'd used them. The air smelled of sweat and leather, familiar and grounding. Marcus stood near the ring, his back to her as he wrapped his hands. He didn't turn around as she approached. "You took your time." Jade dropped her bag by the ropes. "What do you want?" Marcus finally turned, his dark eyes assessing. "You know what I want." Jade crossed her arms. "The fight." Marcus nodded. 50 grand. Winner takes all." Jade's fingers twitched at her sides. "Who's the opponent?" Marcus's smile was slow, deliberate. "Jason Cole." Jade's breath caught. "What?" Marcus shrugged, rolling his shoulders. "He's been causing problems. Talking too much. I figured you'd appreciate the chance to shut him up." Jade's mind raced. Jason Cole. The guy who'd been spreading rumors about her. The guy who'd sent his crew after her last night. The guy who'd made it impossible for her to stay. Marcus watched her, his expression unreadable. "Well." Jade met his gaze. "When?" "Friday night. Same place. 3 days." Jade flexed her hands, the bruises from her last fight still fresh. "I'm in." Marcus's smile widened. "Good." He tossed her a roll of tape. "Better start training." Jade caught it, the weight familiar in her hands. Marcus turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Jade." She looked up. "Don't hold back." Then he was gone, the door swinging shut behind him. Jade stood there for a long moment, the tape digging into her palm. She had 3 days to prepare for the fight of her life. And this time, she wasn't sure she could win. The next 3 days passed in a blur. Jade trained harder than she ever had before, pushing her body to its absolute limits. Coach drilled her relentlessly, correcting her form, forcing her to think ahead. "You're strong," he said one morning as she panted on the mat, her muscles trembling with fatigue. "But Jason's bigger. You have to be smarter." Jade wiped sweat from her eyes. "How?" Coach tossed her a water bottle. "Use his size against him. He's slow. Make him chase you." Jade filed the advice away, adding it to the growing list in her mind. At school, the whispers had reached a fever pitch. Jason and his friends glared at her from across the cafeteria, their expressions dark. Mira smirked whenever they passed in the halls, like she knew something Jade didn't. Kai was nowhere to be seen. Jade told herself she didn't care. Friday arrived too soon. The day dragged, every minute stretching into eternity. Jade went through the motions at school, her mind miles away. After the final bell, she headed straight for the gym. Coach was waiting, his expression grim. "You ready for this?" Jade nodded, her throat too tight to speak. Coach sighed, handing her a towel. "Then let's get you warmed up." An hour later, Jade stood in the locker room, wrapping her hands. The familiar routine steadied her. The tight pull of the fabric, the way it anchored her, kept her fingers from trembling. The door creaked open. Jade looked up, expecting Coach. Kai stood in the doorway, his hands shoved in his pockets, his expression unreadable. Jade's pulse jumped. "What are you doing here?" Kai stepped inside, letting the door swing shut behind him. "You're really going through with this?" It wasn't a question. Jade flexed her fingers, testing the wraps. "Yeah." Kai ran a hand through his hair, his jaw tight. "Jason's not like the others, Jade. He's mean. And he fights dirty." Jade met his gaze. "So do I." Kai exhaled sharply, like the words hurt. "I know." Silence settled between them, heavy with everything they weren't saying. Finally, Kai stepped forward, holding out a small box. "Here." Jade took it, frowning. Inside was a pair of black hand wraps, the fabric high quality and slightly worn. "These were my brother's," Kai said quietly. "He was a fighter too." Jade's breath caught. Kai never talked about his brother. "Kai." "Just take them," Kai said, his voice rough. "And come back in one piece, okay?" Jade nodded, her throat tight. Kai turned to leave, then hesitated. "Jade." She looked up. "Don't die." Then he was gone, the door clicking shut behind him. Jade stared at the wraps in her hands, her vision blurring. She didn't know if she could keep that promise. The warehouse was packed when Jade arrived, the crowd louder and more restless than ever. The air was thick with the smell of sweat and anticipation, the energy crackling like a live wire. Jade moved through the crowd like a ghost, the whispers following her as usual. "That's her. The one who beat Marcus. Jason's gonna kill her." Jade ignored them all. Jason was already in the ring, his massive frame towering over the referee. He looked up as Jade approached, his lips curling into a sneer. "Took you long enough," he called, his voice dripping with contempt. Jade climbed through the ropes, her muscles coiled tight. The referee motioned them to the center. "Rules are the same. No biting, no eye gouging. Fight ends when someone can't continue." Jason smirked. "Oh, she's gonna continue. Right up until I say she's done." The referee ignored him, looking at Jade. "Understood." Jade nodded. The bell rang. Jason moved first, a bull charging forward. Jade dodged, but not fast enough. His fist grazed her temple, sending a sharp burst of pain through her skull. The crowd roared. Jade shook it off, refocusing. Jason was big, but slow. She had to use that. She feinted left, then drove a right hook into his ribs. Jason grunted but didn't back off, retaliating with a brutal elbow to her collarbone. Jade's vision went white. She stumbled back, the ropes digging into her spine. Jason pressed the advantage, raining down blows with terrifying force. Jade blocked what she could, but too many got through. A punch to the ribs, a knee to the stomach, a sharp kick to her already bruised side. The world narrowed to the ache in her bones and the roar of the crowd. Then, through the haze, she saw it. The opening. Jason dropped his guard. Just for a second. Jade didn't hesitate. She drove her fist into his solar plexus. Jason gasped, doubling over. Jade's next punch connected with his jaw, then his nose, then his temple. Jason staggered back, blood streaming from his nose. The crowd was on their feet, their screams deafening. Jade didn't let up. She pressed forward, her fists flying. Left, right, right. Jason's guard faltered. Jade's next punch sent him crashing to the mat. The referee was suddenly there, counting. 1, 2, 3. Jason didn't move. 4, 5. The crowd held its breath. 6. 7. Jason's fingers twitched. 8. 9. Jade braced herself. 10. The bell rang. The crowd erupted. Jade stood in the center of the ring, her chest heaving, her vision swimming. The referee raised her hand, but the victory felt hollow. Jason sat up slowly, wiping blood from his mouth. His expression was unreadable. Then, without a word, he stood and walked away, the crowd parting for him like the Red Sea. Marcus appeared at the edge of the ring, his smile wide. Impressive. Jade didn't respond. Marcus handed her an envelope thicker than any before. 50 grand as promised. Jade took it numbly. The walk back to the locker room was a blur. Kai was waiting inside, his expression unreadable. "You did it," he said quietly. Jade sank onto a bench, her body screaming in protest. "Yeah." Kai handed her a water bottle. "What now?" Jade looked at the envelope in her hands. $70,000 total. Enough to disappear. Enough to start over. She met Kai's gaze. "I don't know." For the first time in a long time, that was the truth. The envelope sat heavy in Jade's lap as she stared at the locker room floor. $70,000. More money than she'd ever dreamed of having. Enough to buy a bus ticket to anywhere and start fresh. No more fights. No more running. Kai leaned against the wall opposite her, arms crossed. He hadn't said much since the fight ended, just helped clean the blood from her split knuckles in silence. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across his face. "You should ice that," he said finally, nodding at her swollen left eye. Jade touched the tender skin gingerly. "It's fine." A beat passed. The distant roar of the crowd still echoed through the walls as the next fight started. Kai pushed off the wall. "So, you leaving tonight?" The question hung between them. Jade flexed her fingers. The wraps Kai had given her now stained with blood and sweat. His brother's wraps. "I don't know," she admitted. Kai's eyebrows shot up. For 3 years, Jade's entire existence had been about surviving, about escaping. Now the means sat right in her hands, and suddenly the path wasn't so clear. Marcus chose that moment to enter, his polished shoes clicking against the concrete floor. "Jade." That was quite the show. Jade's shoulders tensed. "I held up my end." "Indeed." Marcus pulled a cigar from his breast pocket, rolling it between his fingers. "Which is why I'm prepared to make you one final offer." Kai stiffened. "She's done fighting." Marcus ignored him, his dark eyes locked on Jade. "Work for me. 1 year. 100 grand salary. After that, you walk away clean." $100,000. The number echoed in Jade's skull. Complete freedom after just 12 months. Kai's hand closed around her wrist. "Jade." She shook him off, standing to face Marcus. "Doing what exactly?" Marcus smiled. "Security. Collections. The occasional persuasion." He shrugged. "Nothing you're not already good at." The locker room door burst open before Jade could respond. Jason stood framed in the doorway, his nose still bleeding, his eyes wild. "You think this is over?" he spat, swaying slightly from the beating she'd given him. "You're dead, Carter. You hear me? Dead." Marcus sighed. "Jason, you're embarrassing yourself." Jason's face twisted. "Stay out of this, Marcus." He took a threatening step forward, then froze as 2 of Marcus's men materialized behind him. Marcus scared. "Poor judgment seems to run in your family." He nodded to his men. "Take him home." Jason struggled as they grabbed his arms. "You can't protect her forever." The door swung shut behind them, cutting off his threats. Marcus turned back to Jade. "As you can see, my offer includes protection." Kai made a strangled noise. "She doesn't need your kind of protection." Marcus arched an eyebrow. "Doesn't she?" Jade's mind raced. 100 grand would set her up for life. No more scraping by. No more running. But the cost. She looked down at her hands. The wraps were fraying at the edges, the fabric worn thin from years of use. Just like her. "No," she said quietly. Marcus stilled. "I beg your pardon?" Jade met his gaze. I said no. I'm done. For the first time since she'd met him, Marcus looked genuinely surprised. Then his expression hardened. That's unfortunate. Kai stepped between them. She gave you her answer. Marcus studied them both for a long moment before smiling coldly. Very well. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. Do keep in mind, Jade, my protection only extends to those in my employ. The door clicked shut behind him. Kai whirled on her. What the hell was that? Jade sank back onto the bench. I don't want to be like him. You wouldn't be. Wouldn't I? She held up her bruised hands. This is all I know how to do, Kai. Hurt people. Kai knelt in front of her, his dark eyes intense. No, it's not. Jade looked away. You don't know me. I know you didn't have to help Coach's granddaughter when those guys were harassing her. I know you didn't have to stand up for that freshman Mira was bullying. And I know you sure as hell didn't have to give half your first fight earnings to Ms. Reynolds when her diner was about to close. Jade's head snapped up. How did you? People talk. Kai shrugged. Just not to you, because you scare the hell out of them. A surprised laugh escaped Jade's lips. It hurt her ribs. Kai grew serious again. The point is, you've got choices. More than you think. Jade looked down at the envelope in her hands. $70,000. A fresh start. Or, she met Kai's gaze. What if I stayed? Kai's breath caught. Yeah. Jade took a deep breath. But not for the fights. For something else. Kai's smile was slow and bright, like sunrise after a long night. I think I can work with that. Outside, the crowd roared as another fight ended. But for the first time in as long as she could remember, Jade wasn't thinking about the next hit, the next opponent, the next escape. She was thinking about what came after. Epilogue. The bell above the door jingled as Jade stepped into the diner. The morning rush had died down, leaving only a few regulars scattered at the counter and booths. Ms. Reynolds looked up from the register, her face lighting up. Well, look what the cat dragged in. Jade slid onto a stool at the counter. Morning. Ms. Reynolds snorted, pouring a cup of coffee without being asked. It's nearly noon, sleepyhead. Jade took the mug gratefully. After 3 months of normal sleep schedules, her body still wasn't used to it. The kitchen doors swung open, and Kai emerged, balancing 3 plates up one arm. He grinned when he saw her. Look who finally decided to show up for her shift. Shift doesn't start till 1, Jade pointed out, stealing a piece of bacon from one of the plates. Kai dodged her next attempt, laughing. Hey, hands off the paying customer's food. Ms. Reynolds rolled her eyes. Just get back there and cook, smartass. Kai saluted with a spatula before disappearing back into the kitchen. Jade sipped her coffee, watching the sunlight stream through the diner windows. The envelope of money was still tucked under her mattress, minus what she'd used to pay first month's rent on a tiny apartment above the diner. The door opened again, letting in a burst of cold air. Jade tensed instinctively before recognizing the newcomer. Coach, looking grumpier than usual. He slid onto the stool beside her. You're late. Jade frowned. For what? Coach pulled a flyer from his jacket and slapped it on the counter. First class was supposed to start an hour ago. Jade picked up the flyer. In bold letters it read, Eastridge Community Center, Women's Self-Defense Class. Instructor, Jade Carter. Her throat tightened. What is this? Coach shrugged, stealing her coffee. Figured you could put those fists to better use. Kai leaned out from the kitchen, wiping his hands on his apron. So, you in? Jade looked between them, at the flyer, at the diner that had become something like home. She took a deep breath. Yeah, she said. I'm in. Outside, the sun shone bright on the sidewalk. Somewhere in the distance, a car horn blared. Life went on. And for the first time in a long time, Jade was ready to meet it.